The night Ava saved the company, the office was empty. Just the blue glow of her dual monitors and the stale smell of La Croix burps and broken promises. It was 2:13 a.m. The Stripe integration, one they'd botched twice before, was hanging on by a deprecated API call and a prayer. One line wrong and their biggest client, a fintech unicorn with a short fuse and deep pockets, would walk. She didn't call anyone, didn't slack. She just did it, quiet, surgical, like she always had. At 9 a.m., everyone walked in chipper, unaware that their jobs had been hanging off a cliff with Ava holding the rope in her teeth. The CEO, Trevor, Stanford dropout with a half-grown beard and enough VC jargon to kill a horse, didn't even look up from his smoothie when she told him it was fixed. He just blinked, slurped, and said nice. That's what being an owner is about. No thanks, no bonus, no acknowledgement. Been working weekends since Q3 and hadn't seen a raise in 18 months, so she waited until the Monday stand-up. The team circled up around the whiteboard. Ava cleared her throat. Quick note, I'd like to talk comp, Trevor. It's been almost 2 years, and I've taken on product, ops, and engineering integration. I'd like to propose a title bump and a 15% raise. He smiled like a man who's never balanced his own checking account. Still pre-revenue, think like an owner. And just like that, her stomach dropped through the floor. The room went silent, except for someone's cold brew fizzing in the background like a bad joke. Think like an owner. She'd poured sweat into a product they didn't even QA before demoing. She'd cleaned up their post-tax Slack chaos while Trevor was doing mushrooms in Joshua Tree. She was the goddamn owner in everything but stock options. She didn't say a word. Smiled, that was Ava's thing. She smiled like a loaded gun left on the table, quiet, shiny, dangerous. By lunch, she'd already ordered a copy of Delaware Business Entities, Structures and Strategies, Prime Delivery. Her tab had 2 new bookmarks, Uniform Commercial Code Liens and Distressed Debt Acquisition 101. Rage, sure. But focused rage is a skill set. And hey, if you're still listening this, smash that little subscribe button. I'm trying to hit my first 10,000 subscribers, and every single one gets me closer to replacing Trevor's face with mine on the next TechCrunch article. Appreciate you. That afternoon, she wandered over to the finance pod. Smiled at Connor, the junior bookkeeper who always wore too much cologne and never updated the cash flow doc on time. Hey, she said casually, holding 2 cold brews. Mind if I peek at our outstanding invoices? I want to check something about net 60 terms for a client call. Connor, flattered and undercaffeinated, shrugged. Knock yourself out. Ava didn't need to check anything. She already knew the numbers were bleeding. But what she wanted was the vendor list, the debts, the missed payments, the outstanding lease on that janky CNC printer no one used anymore. She wasn't just thinking like an owner now. She was thinking like a repo man. That night, she sat in her tiny apartment with a microwave meal and a legal pad covered in names, vendors, loan issuers, the third-party fulfillment center that was ghosting their emails. Each name got a number. Each number got a red underline if she smelled desperation. Desperation was leverage. Leverage was power. They thought she wanted a raise. Cute. What she really wanted was control. And control wasn't handed out in staff meetings. It was bought cheap. The people in hoodies were too busy crafting their vision decks to notice the foundation rotting under their feet. Trevor's words echoed again. Think like an owner, she would. Just not the kind he expected. 3 weeks later, the first real crack didn't come with a bang. It came with a Slack thread titled #FinanceOpsWeirdness and the world's most passive-aggressive message from Taylor, their head of finance, who looked like she stress-cried between every spreadsheet. Hey team, just a friendly reminder to hold off on any new vendor agreements until we finalize Q1 carryover. Appreciate everyone's understanding and resilience in this exciting chapter chart. Translation, we're broke, but please keep pretending the lights are still on. Within days, the vibe in the office turned from startup quirky to startup desperate. Cold brew ran out. Snack budget slashed. Kombucha tap got replaced with a handwritten sign that said pending renewal, drink water instead droplet. Even the guy who ran their TikTok ads, who once bragged about owning 3 NFTs and microdosing for strategy, stopped showing up. Payroll hit late twice, and when Tyler from Backend asked about it, he got a classic Trevor reply: startups aren't a paycheck, they're a purpose. Tyler turned in his badge by the end of the week, followed swiftly by Nina, only front-end engineer who knew how to write accessible code and not cry while doing it. Ava, she stayed. Not out of loyalty, those days were gone like the oat milk. No, she stayed because corpses tell you more than survivors. She was studying the death spiral, and every chaotic move the execs made dropped new breadcrumbs. She started building what she called her doom drawer, a locked Google Drive folder with subfolders titled things like accounts payable, lol, investor emails to watch, and people we owe who might have baseball bats. Whenever someone sent a panicked request or whispered about Trevor burning through angel funds on a 3-month SAW retreat in Chilum, Ava made a note. And then came the envelope. It showed up in the office mail bin, half-shoved, half-forgotten, buried between some expired startup promo swag and a late Amazon delivery. A plain white envelope, marked urgent. Final notice. Only saw it because she was the one who always checked the mail now. Taylor had been working remotely since the last finance meltdown, which seemed to consist of a lot of muted Zooms and a growing collection of empty wine glasses behind her on camera. Ava flipped it over. No return address. Just a seal from Grant and McKenna LLP. That name pinged something in her memory. She didn't open it, she didn't have to. She snapped a photo of the front, Googled it. There it was. A boutique debt collection firm out of Boston that specialized in buying distressed startup liabilities and facilitating outcomes. In short, the vultures had started circling. Ava slid the envelope onto Trevor's desk like it was a harmless piece of junk mail. He barely glanced at it before burying it under a dog-eared pitch deck, titled Series, A Narrative Vision Over Profit. The man was allergic to red ink and reality. She walked out of his office and didn't even pretend to be upset anymore. There was no fight left to win in the traditional sense. She wasn't climbing the ladder, she was cutting it down behind her. That night, she poured herself a glass of discount wine and finally made a new spreadsheet. She titled it Open Wounds. Column A, Name of Creditor. Column B, Amount Owed. Column C, lien status. Column D, mood level just for her. Entries ranged from probably gonna cry to might sue. She stared at the growing list like it was a constellation, a roadmap to something better. Not revenge, exactly. Something colder, cleaner, control, ownership. They didn't know it yet, but the clock had started ticking. And when it hit 0, Ava wouldn't be asking for a raise. She'd be naming her price. It started over 2 drinks and a bowl of stale bar peanuts in a dive joint that smelled like spilled whiskey and broken NDAs. Ava hadn't seen her cousin Rachel in months. Law school had turned her into a caffeine-fueled skeleton with a tote bag full of unread case briefs and questionable dating decisions. But now Rachel had a shiny new badge that said Associate Attorney Restructuring Group, Levin and Marks LLP, which basically meant she spent her days elbow deep in the guts of dying companies and her nights microwaving pad thai while whispering force majeure in her sleep. So how's the startup life? Rachel asked, stirring her gin and tonic like she hated it. Ava gave her a practiced shrug. Picture a burning trash can full of investor buzzwords, managed by a trust fund with a whiteboard fetish. Rachel snorted. God, I miss you. They talked, swapped horror stories, laughed at LinkedIn influencers, and somewhere between drink 1 and 2, Ava let a sliver of truth slip out. I got passed over for a raise after saving the company from imploding. CEO told me to think like an owner. Rachel blinked. Yikes. Classic founder gaslight. You want my advice? Always. Rachel leaned in, voice low and amused. You should think like an owner. Just not the kind he meant. Ava raised an eyebrow. Go on. So Rachel did. She started talking about how startups rack up debt like it's a badge of honor. Bridge loans, unpaid vendors, equipment leases, lines of credit tied to imaginary projections. Most of it's unsecured, she added. And when the company starts sinking, that debt gets scooped up cheap. Pennies on the dollar. Sometimes by vulture funds. Sometimes by people who know what they're doing. Like your firm? Rachel shrugged. Sure. Or a former employee with a grudge and an LLC. Ava didn't blink. Is that legal? Rachel grinned. Totally. If they're too dumb to track it, it's their problem. Happens all the time. And just like that, something in Ava's brain clicked. Not like a light bulb, more like a lock turning. She played it cool. Didn't react. Just nodded, asked a few follow-ups, and steered the convo back towards safer waters. Rachel's new partner who used the word synergy in bed, client who tried to offer stock options to pay legal fees, that kind of thing. But the second Ava got home, she cracked open her laptop like it was a treasure chest. She started Googling. How to buy startup debt. UCC lien search tools by state. Can a non-accredited investor buy unpaid invoices? What's the cheapest way to start an LLC in Delaware? The tabs multiplied. Her wine glass stayed full. And by 2 a.m., Ava had formed something entirely new, not a revenge plan, not a startup, but a legal entity. Silver Birch Acquisitions, LLC. She picked the name at random. It sounded clean, harmless, like a retirement fund your aunt forgets she had, a burner Gmail account, a $129 filing fee, a virtual mailbox in Wilmington. It was almost too easy. Sat back and stared at the email confirmation from the Delaware Division of Corporations like it was a birth certificate for her new self. Not Ava the overworked COO. Ava the silent creditor, the paper ghost in the wiring, the thing they wouldn't see coming until it was way too late. The next morning, she logged into a public Lien database and started typing in the company's legal name. Hits popped up instantly. 4 in California. 2 in New York. 1 flagged in Massachusetts from Grant and McKenna LLP, the firm behind the ignored envelope. She clicked through each one like peeling off scabs. There were vendor names she recognized: Print Glide Logistics, Cloud Post Fulfillment, a weird little dev agency they hadn't paid since 2022. All angry, all broke, all owed money by a company still out here pitching a unicorn vision to drunk VCs in Patagonia vests. Started a new spreadsheet titled Purchase Candidates. And then she wrote down the first rule in bold: if they don't notice the blood, they'll never see who's holding the knife. By the time her team had logged into Slack the next morning, Ava had already scheduled her first cold call. Silver Birch Acquisitions was open for business. The first piece of the carcass came cheap. Print Glide Logistics, the freight vendor they'd ghosted after a failed product drop in Q4, was owed $40,000 and some change. Ava, under the name of her newly minted shell, Silver Birch, offered to take it off their hands for $5,600 flat. The woman on the phone laughed, coughed, and said, "Hell, it's more than I thought we'd ever see." Deal closed within 2 days. Ava wired the funds from a separate account she'd set up under a trust, just to be extra slippery. She didn't want breadcrumbs. She wanted fog. 2 weeks later, picked up the remnants of a lease from Bolt Source Rentals, some overpriced 3D printer the founders used for exactly one show-off demo at CES, before shoving it in a storage closet next to the CEO's surfboard, and a crate of expired swag socks. The remaining balance was just shy of $17K. She snagged it for $2,300 after playing phone tag with a Sleepy Collections rep who admitted, "We stopped trying. Those guys ghosted us months ago." The third piece, that one had teeth. Ava bought into an old convertible bridge note, one of those early desperation plays the founders had pulled back when the burn rate exceeded the hype. It was held by an angel investor who'd clearly given up, judging by the one-word email replies and the fact he used AOL. He sold off $50K of it for barely $6,000 and didn't even bother asking why she wanted it. He told him she was exploring startup asset diversification. He replied, "Godspeed." Each time, Ava did the paperwork by night and went to work by day like nothing had changed. She sat through all-hands meetings, nodded through Trevor's monologues about founder grit and vision velocity, and even volunteered to help draft their series Investor Update. In that draft, Trevor claimed they had no significant liabilities. Ava bolded the sentence for emphasis. What none of them knew was that she'd already started folding her paper shivs. Quiet, legal, lethal. By the start of Q2, Silver Birch held legal control over $132,000 worth of the company's outstanding obligations. She had the documents, the UCC lien confirmations, the debt purchase agreements, the account statements. She even had one invoice handwritten on letterhead that still smelled faintly of printer ink and despair. The best part? She had trigger rights, that bridge note clause. If 25% of the company's total outstanding debt were called in simultaneously, it would legally count as a default event. Breach of covenant, which meant 2 things: the board would have to be notified, and the company's assets, including IP, would be subject to scrutiny, forced negotiation, or worst-case scenario, liquidation. Ava stared at the spreadsheet that night in her apartment, barefoot and buzzing with the kind of calm that only comes when you've constructed a guillotine no one knows exists. She wasn't going to use it. Not yet. That would be too easy. No, she wanted pressure. The idea of collapse. The faint whiff of something wrong. Let Trevor sweat. Let the CFO triple-check the books and wonder why the numbers weren't lining up. Let the board whisper in side calls. Let panic bloom just behind their carefully rehearsed Zoom smiles. She scrolled through Slack while sipping her tea. Trevor had posted a selfie from a co-working rooftop in Miami. Hustling never sleeps. Big meetings tomorrow. Manifesting greatness. Ava clicked the photo, zoomed in on his sunglasses. In the reflection, an empty margarita glass and someone's bare foot. She smiled. They were too busy selling a dream to notice the wolves were already in the house. And one of them had their keys. It happened on a Tuesday, because of course it did. Tuesdays are when bad startups go to die. Ava had just sat down with her third coffee when Slack exploded like someone had tossed a grenade into HashExecOps. Trevor posted a breathless urgent all hands in 15, followed by 3 flame emojis and a gif of the dog in a burning room saying this is fine. Irony, dead and buried. The Zoom call started late, classic. Trevor's hair was messy in that curated tech bro way that screamed I sleep under my desk, but really I just forgot to shower. The CFO, Gabe, looked like he hadn't blinked in 48 hours. Taylor from finance was actually on site, meaning someone must have offered her a bonus or a nervous breakdown. Okay, Trevor said, clapping once like a preschool teacher. I'm gonna keep it real. We've got a situation. He paused, waiting for drama. No one took the bait. Someone, he continued, is calling in multiple outstanding debts. We're talking vendors, notes, lease stuff. Like it's all happening at once. There was a beat of silence before someone on product unmuted and said, like a collections agency? No, Gabe cut in. Worse. It's not a random agency, it's coordinated. Same signatory across 3 filings. Looks like a fund or a holding company. We're trying to figure it out now. Ava leaned in, with her best concerned but competent face. Do we have an address or contact name? Just the LLC name, Gabe muttered. Silver Birch Acquisitions. Ava blinked, tilted her head just slightly. Never heard of it, but I can help track it down. Happy to coordinate vendor comms if needed. Trevor smiled like a drowning man grabbing a cinder block. God, thank you. Yes, please. You're a lifesaver. She nodded, muted. Took a sip of coffee so they couldn't hear her laugh. Weren't just flailing. They were free-falling with a vision board taped to their backs and no chute. Watching them try to triage the mess she'd orchestrated was like watching a dog chase its own tail and still somehow miss. That afternoon, while the founders played whack-a-mole with phantom creditors, Ava went to work doing what she did best, looking helpful while planting grenades. She pulled up the contact sheet for their top 5 enterprise clients. These were the whales, ones Trevor boasted about in every investor deck. The ones who really paid attention to liability clauses. She picked Lydian Data Group, their biggest contract and most skittish partner. The kind of client that ran background checks on UX interns and used the word due diligence like seasoning. She composed a simple, anonymous email from a Proton mail burner. Subject: Important note regarding financial stability of vendor relationship, dear Lydian Compliance Officer. We strongly recommend revisiting the liability and default clauses in your agreement with company name, in light of new UCC filings and debt calls involving the firm. Best regards, a friend. She hit send. Then she went back to Slack and dropped into the finance channel with a casual, "Hey, just following up on outstanding invoices. Want me to field any calls from vendors until we ID the Birch entity?" Trevor replied instantly, "Yes, please, you're amazing." The next morning, Lydian's legal team emailed Trevor directly. They wanted a formal financial risk report within 48 hours, or they'd be suspending access to their sandbox environment. Trevor nearly popped a blood vessel on the call. Ava offered to draft the reply. That night, she walked through her apartment barefoot, sipping bourbon, rereading her spreadsheet. Each debt, each name, each invoice with her initials scrawled at the bottom. She opened a new document titled Trigger Sequence, suggested timeline, and smiled like someone rehearsing a toast at a funeral. They had no idea where the fire was coming from, and Ava, she was just getting warmed up. The meeting took place in the only conference room with doors that still closed properly. Others either stuck, creaked, or had post-it notes wedged into the hinges to keep the walls from rattling when someone sneezed. Ava picked this one on purpose. No cameras, no distractions. Just her, Trevor, and Gabe, the startup's fearless duo of delusion and denial, sitting across from her like 2 high schoolers called into the principal's office. Trevor was already sweating before the door shut. Gabe had that accountant's panic face, tight jaw, wild eyes, fingers twitching near his tablet like a priest clinging to scripture. Ava didn't sit right away. She placed a manila folder gently on the table, one hand on it like a poker chip or a detonator. "Thanks for making the time," she said, calm as lake water. I figured we could drop the performative optimism for 15 minutes and talk reality. Gabe shifted. Trevor attempted a smirk. If this is about the Lydian scare, we're on top of it. They just misunderstood some stuff. Ava opened the folder without a word. Inside, debt purchase agreements, UCC filings, copies of default, clauses, a notarized letter from the original bridge note, holder confirming the sale, a ledger of current balances owed, neatly highlighted with interest accruals, and payment deadlines. Gabe went pale. Trevor blinked like he didn't understand English. "What is this?" he asked, voice wobbling somewhere between arrogance and dread. Ava finally sat, crossed one leg over the other, laced her fingers. "It's your debt," she said, almost bored. "Well, mine now. Roughly $132K across multiple vendors and one particularly nasty convertible note that lets me trigger a default event anytime I want. Which, fun fact, means your board gets notified. Your IP gets frozen in legal limbo, and Lydian, they'll pull out before lunch." Trevor opened his mouth, closed it, then opened it again. This is blackmail." "No," she smiled. "This is business. You told me to think like an owner. Turns out I'm a fast learner." Gabe looked like he wanted to run. "We'll contest this. This is a breach of fiduciary trust, maybe even fraud. You can't just I can, and I did." She pushed the folder an inch closer to them, slow and deliberate. "But I'm not here to burn it all down, not yet." Trevor leaned forward, grasping at control. "What do you want?" "Two options," Ava said, holding up two fingers. "Option 1, I sell the debt to an actual shark. There's a hedge fund in Boston that specializes in this kind of implosion. You'll get eaten alive, bankruptcy, personal liability, reputation burned to ash." She dropped her second finger. "Option 2, I convert my position into equity, controlling equity. I want full voting rights, majority stake. You both stay on, but I run the show. Effective immediately." Silence. Not dramatic, not cinematic, just stunned, like the sound of an old machine finally realizing it's obsolete. Trevor tried to laugh. It came out choked. "You're bluffing." Ava opened her phone, clicked once, turned it around. On screen, an email draft to the aforementioned hedge fund, fully written, ready to send. "Whom it may concern. I currently hold distressed debt totaling $132,437 across 4 instruments tied to company name." Trevor's face cracked. Ava locked eyes with him. "You've got until noon tomorrow. Think fast. Think like owners." She stood, took the folder, and left the room without waiting for a reply. By the time she reached her desk, Gabe had already DM'd her. "Can we talk privately?" She didn't answer. He didn't need to. The chessboard had flipped. They needed her now. But she didn't need anything from them. The emergency board meeting was scheduled for 6 p.m. on a Thursday, which in startup time might as well be the witching hour. Everyone knew something was up. The calendar invite said governance review urgent, which is corporate code for someone's about to get defenestrated. The Zoom call was a Brady bunch of silent dread. Faces half lit by blue light, wine glasses off camera, a few kids screaming in the background. The board members, all of whom had once drunk Trevor's kombucha-flavored Kool-Aid, looked different now. Nervous, defensive, like people who just realized they bet on a horse with 3 legs and a podcast. Ava entered the room late, deliberately, cool as dry ice. She wore black and didn't smile. Just opened a PDF and dropped it into the shared screen, titled Restructuring Proposal, Debt Consolidation, Governance Optimization, and Leadership Realignment. Trevor stammered before she even started. "We're not voting on this." "This is a stunt." Gabe, who'd been silent for days, leaned in. "We have to vote. She's holding the debt. If we don't, we could get sued by literally everyone on this call." Ava didn't flinch. "I'm not asking you to trust me. I'm asking you to choose survival." Then she clicked to the next slide. It showed a pie chart of the company's liabilities, a map of the UCC liens, and a big, fat red countdown clock labeled default event in 5 business days. Nobody said a word. That's when Greg, the old-school angel investor with 2 ex-wives and a suspicious tan, cleared his throat and said, "Jesus. Okay, let's vote." Trevor's face went white. "You can't be serious." But they were. 7 votes cast, 5 in favor of Ava, 2 abstained. Trevor was removed by majority vote effective immediately. No golden parachute, no tearful speech, just a slack deactivation and the quiet sound of a dream getting repoed in real time. Ava was named interim CEO. The next morning, her badge still didn't work, because of course the CTO forgot to update permissions, so she made them let her in through the loading dock. The symbolism wasn't lost on her. She walked in past the ping-pong table, inspirational posters, the deflated beanbags, and into a sea of stunned stares and slack whispers. Half the staff didn't come in that day. Some left keys on their desks. A few rage quit in the hash general channel with dramatic emoji strings. But the ones who stayed, they clapped when she walked past. Real claps, not sarcastic startup claps. The kind that meant finally. She held an all hands in the kitchen at noon. No deck, no hashtags, just black coffee and brutal honesty. I bought the debt, she said. I own controlling interest. The old regime is gone. If you're here to build, stay. If you're here to posture, leave now. You'll be doing us both a favor. Silence. Then nods, and someone somewhere muttered, damn. By 5 p.m., she rehired 2 people, not VPs, not ex-founders. The first was Renee, a former product designer who'd been told she was too soft-spoken for leadership. The second was Khadija, back-end dev who'd been passed over 3 times for promotion while training dudes who wore Yeezys to interviews. Ava brought them into her office, closed the door, and said, build this right with me. No theatrics, no bullshit, just results. They said yes without blinking. That night, the office felt different, lighter, still haunted maybe, but no longer cursed. Ava sat alone in the old CEO's chair, her chair now, staring at the city lights. Indication hummed in her blood. But so did something else. Not loneliness, something sharper, clarity. Power doesn't heal you. It just makes the silence echo louder. TechCrunch Disrupt smelled like ambition and overstimulated egos. The kind of place where founders practiced their origin stories in the mirror and investors walked around with eyebrows permanently raised, scanning for the next overpriced pipe dream. Ava didn't belong here, not in the traditional sense. She wasn't wearing a branded hoodie or VR goggles. No product demo. No emotional pitch about changing the world one dopamine loop at a time. She walked onto the panel stage in a charcoal blazer, black jeans, and boots that had seen the inside of courtrooms and cargo docks alike. No gimmicks, just precision. The panel was called Resilience in the Age of Burnout, ironically moderated by a man who once posted a 3,000-word Medium article about how ayahuasca helped him pivot to edtech. Ava waited her turn. The founder to her left was sweating through his Patagonia vest while rambling about radical transparency. The woman on her right kept talking about team love languages and manifestation org charts. Then came Ava. She clicked the remote. Slide 1, the company's name and logo. Slide 2, a tidy graph showing a nosedive in Q1, followed by a sharp recovery in Q3. Slide 3, debt consolidation plan execution summary. Slide 4, side-by-side screenshots of their old burn rate vs. the current cash flow. Slide 5, her, standing in front of a whiteboard mid-sentence, mid-plan, mid-takeover. She didn't talk about feelings. She didn't say hustle or synergy once. What she did say, slowly and clearly, was this: we didn't bounce back because of vision. We bounced back because someone finally looked at the ledger and said, stop pretending this is working. The room went still. Investors leaned forward. Founders side-eyed their COOs like they'd just been handed a loaded gun. Then she clicked to the final slide. It was a photo of her old pay stub from 2 years ago, just above minimum wage with COO interim scribbled in pen. Next to it, 72-point font. Think like an owner, T. Chambers, former CEO. The room broke. Laughter, gasps. Even a few claps before the moderator tried to regain control. Ava closed the presentation with a single line, I did. She walked offstage to 3 podcast invites, 2 discrete term sheet offers, and 1 very sweaty founder who asked if she'd be interested in advising his B2B NFT startup. She told him to email her, and then blocked him before she hit the parking lot. Back at the hotel, she poured a glass of whiskey and opened her laptop. 2 notifications blinked in her inbox. Silver Birch Acquisitions confirmation of purchase. East Stachio $89K debt package, acquired for $11,300. Ripple Cart Labs $117K convertible note, purchased at $0.14 on the dollar. She didn't smile. She calculated. Control was no longer a theory. It was her business model. Ava closed the laptop, raised her glass, and muttered, next. Big thanks, you legends of the old office days. Subscribe to keep the switch-flicking chaos alive. Your ex-boss is shaking in their loafers.